for the first time tonight. If you are here for the first time, put your hand up and leave your hand up until we give you something. Janet, there's another one in the front here too, so just leave your hand up and make it obvious. Okay, how many of y'all were at the election process? Did you learn anything?
Wow.
Yeah, it was good. So I've had about 50 of you tonight come up to me already and say, how can I watch that video again? Or I missed it, and how can I watch the video? Anytime, all of our meetings, our monthly meetings, or whatever we do, is now recorded. Thank you to these two gentlemen up front with cameras in front of their faces. Anyway, if you go to our website, .com, at the top it says YouTube. You just click on YouTube and you can go and watch any of our videos anytime. Okay, so that's on there. And there was a letter, I guess, is that what it is? A letter that was handed out at that meeting that Susan Peabody was nice enough to copy for all of us so that we can sign it and get it to our Attorney General and kind of put some pressure on so that this election fraud stuff would be more important to him, I guess. So anyway, Susan has those. So if you would take one of these papers, sign it, turn it in, that would be fantastic. We can put some feet to the fire. So, what else do we have? Rebecca, are you here? Rebecca, come on up. Rebecca Warwick is the Heritage Action. Y'all remember Wade Miller, right? Wade Miller, y'all remember Wade Miller? Oh my gosh, he maybe has been gone too long. This is his replacement, but how long have you been in this position? No, but I mean, for Texas. 2 years, so November this.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, for giving me a couple minutes to speak, and I'm really glad she has mentioned about the election fraud. In Washington, D.C., in Congress right now, it's going to be voted on later this month, is a bill called H.R. 1, the For the People Act. This is a must-do bill by Speaker Pelosi. The For the People Act is anything but federalizes all elections, meaning it's going to tell the states and localities how they may run their elections, which includes requiring states to have same-day voter registration, early voting, expanding the absentee ballots, online voter registration, automatic voter registration. So if you go to the DMV or go get food stamps, you're automatically enrolled, regardless if you're able to prove you're citizens or not. And along with that, online voter registration does not require matching up with a driver's license. It's just your input and your stuff, and there you are, you're registered to vote. Can you say voter fraud there? This actually has a host of other really bad policies. Includes taking away the state's ability to draw congressional districts. So as you know, your state legislature, they determine your districts. Not anymore. Under H.R. 1, it would remove that power from the states, which means moving it from you into an independent commission that's unaccountable to we the people and how they draw those districts. It's unconstitutional. The U.S. Constitution gives states the power in drawing their districts and handling their own elections. Right now, the Democrats are hoping to bait some Republicans in supporting this bill because it's called For the People. It sounds so good, right? It's not. So I'm urging you to call all your members of Congress, especially those Republicans, and urge them to oppose this bill. Call the Democrats as well. We don't need Washington, D.C. bureaucrats controlling our elections, telling us how we can register our voters. It also goes after state voter ID laws, which I know is important here in Texas. So we don't need bureaucrats in DC telling us what to do for our elections, when in fact this bill is going to make it even harder for us to make sure that it's citizens voting that are accountable to us. So again, that's H.R. 1, the For the People Act. If you want more information, heritageaction.com. We have information on there. Hans von Siskowski from Heritage actually just testified before the House Judiciary Committee. You can read his testimony at heritage.org. And I'll be sitting right over there if you have any questions about H.R. 1. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Constitution Boot Camp, who has up? Oh, I know more than you have signed up than that, because we've actually had a really good, I think we've got like 80 people signed up so far. It is not happening until March. You can link to it from our Facebook or from our website, but I just want to make sure you're getting it on your calendars because it's going to sneak up on us. We are having an in-depth study on the Constitution, but we're breaking it into 2 sections. So we've got a group for adults and a group for 6th through 12th grade. So 2 different teachers, 2 different sessions, but it's going to be really good and beneficial. We do have scholarships, and only like 2 people have come to me asking for the scholarship. So especially for the youth, don't stay home because of money. I think it's what are we charging? $30, $35? I can't remember. 30. And then if you have a spouse or somebody in your family, you can share books. It's only 15, and it's 15 for the youth as well. So if you don't have to be a tea partier. If you've got a grandkid that you want to learn about the Constitution, anybody is welcome. Okay, just go to our website and sign up for that. What else do I want to tell you? Is Chris ready? Chris? Sure. Okay, come on up. Chris Putnam, yeah.
All right. So can I get a quick show of hands for everyone who is with SB2 or HB2? That's good that many people understand what's going on. So it is SB2, which is currently being debated in the state Senate. In fact, it just literally today successfully came out of committee, which is great news. These are the preeminent property tax reform bills going on in the current legislature. And it's an important change in the dynamic this year because obviously we don't have our friend Joe Strauss obstructing legitimate Republican and conservative reforms. And what's also great about this bill or in these set of reforms is that you have the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the speaker all 100% aligned to support them and get them passed. So what are these bills? They do not provide property tax relief. In other words, there's no actual cuts, but what they do is limit the amount of tax revenue that a local entity can increase your taxes by in any given calendar year to 2.5%. And so at 2.5% is basically a trigger, for potentially a rollback election in the event that they want to raise more tax revenue than that, then they have to go to you, the voter, and you decide if it's okay for them to do. So you hear all this ridiculous buzzword nonsense about, it's a sacrifice to things like local control, which basically means that local politicians, and I was one, as many of you know, a former city councilman, mayor pro tem, they want to completely retain control over the property tax process, and they want zero state intervention. Their ability to continue to spend, borrow, and tax at will. And they are all lining up against it, just like they do every single session. Most notably here in Tarrant County, County Judge Glenn Whitley. Yep. Right. Yeah. Who is the worst politician in the state with an R by his name. This is a guy that's attacked conservative legislators, campaigned against conservative legislators, and now he is actively waging a war against his own taxpayers. Yep. The mayor of Southlake, Laura Hill, formally opposed it last week in a letter to the legislature. She's on the record, it's in the testimony. Most of your city leaders and school district leaders will oppose it for the reasons that I just described. So what do we need you guys to do? A lot of these guys are hiding right now. My own state rep won't take a position. Yeah. In the meantime, you go on Twitter, and Governor Abbott, every 10 times an hour, is featuring another state legislator who is literally on a video publicly supporting this bill. And it feels pretty good in the Senate right now. That'll pass without a lot of material changes, but look, in the House, you still have a Joe Strauss deep state. Yeah, you do. And in terms of the legislators that are there, including my own. Mm-hmm. And so these people have to be rooted out, which means we all have to do it. So how do we do that? You have to hit their social media pages, and you have to demand that they provide their position on the bill now, not later, now. A great activist in South Lake, many of you know, Yvette Yacht, she went down and testified last week. She has these great buttons. Yes, there's one right there. Would you show everybody that? 2.5? Yeah, 2.5. So, her husband Reg has created a Facebook profile with that button. Yeah. And you can replace your Facebook profile with it. Yeah. So we'd ask you to do that as well. And then there is a Facebook page that is just starting. I gotta find the name of it, so give me a second.
Texans for Property Tax Relief and Reform.
Texans for Property Tax Relief and Reform. Please follow that page, share it, circulate it to all your friends. And the last thing you can do is actually show up at public hearings.
Yeah.
So last week, they had the SB2 hearings, super enlightening. You had literally a parade of public officials, elected officials, who opposed the bill they're testifying, on our dime.
Yeah.
Along with their lobbyists, of course, TML, TASB, TASA. And then you had a huge group of citizens who were there on their own time, including a lot of folks in this room. And the response was overwhelming. Like the committee, if you haven't seen the video, commit yourself to a couple of hours of it because it's extraordinarily compelling because there is just no rational argument against these types of reforms, none. And by the way, before I forget, while every single Northeast Tarrant mayor, most city council people, and of course Whitley, opposed the bill, I'm proud that in my city, where I was a former councilman, mayor pro tem, my mayor, Richard Newton, is one of the few city leaders on the record supporting this reform. And he's been talking to the governor's office as a result. So as always, Colleyville kind of leads the way. So just last, and I'll be as brief as possible. So here's why this is important, because the way that we got here is that these local tax entities all basically point the finger at each other and play the blame game. Because usually we know these people, right? We know our community. It's the old thing about how everybody loves their congressman but hates Congress. And so like your state rep, well, the problem really is, it's the cities or it's the schools who control their own budget, control their own tax rates. The schools will point the finger at, I've literally heard this. I mean, most of you know we ran a school board race last year, and school board trustees told people that they don't control their taxes. It's absolutely insane. And then everybody blamed that they're not the problem. And then nothing gets done, nothing happens.
Yeah.
So the great thing about these bills also is, now the community will have to be accountable to you directly, because they're going to have to then make the argument that as to why they need to increase revenue more than 2.5%. And I think most of you in this room clearly understand we've been getting property tax increases way higher than that. Exchange yesterday with a South Lake City councilman who was arguing this point with me, and I literally got his own CAFR data. It showed him where they increased their property taxes 9% last year. I'm like, well, it's no wonder. It's no wonder you don't want a 2.5% trigger for a rollback. So he was trying to play the same game, and they're all going to play this game. They're all going to. This is an important game to watch too, because the new one they're going to do is this isn't actually property. So don't you really want relief, not just slowing the growth? Well, of course we do, but this is a step in the right direction, and it's a bill that every single leader in the state, Republican leader in the state of Texas, is behind, and that's why we got to get behind it. Because worst case, they're just not going to be able to raise our taxes arbitrarily 10+% single year, not without coming to us for permission. So thank you guys, and please, please, please commit your, not just your state electeds, so your state rep, your state senator, the other people that influence this are your city council people, your mayor, and your school boards. And I think everybody here knows that, school district spending is about 65% of your property tax bill.
Yeah.
And they are hiding right now. They do not want to go on the record because the wild majority of them oppose the bills. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. I think I heard you say that your state rep is hiding and won't say anything. Who is your state rep?
HD98.
Oh, HD98, would that be Giovanni?
I think it's him.
It's Giovanni. Okay, so I want to talk about money, and I feel like we do that a lot lately because we don't have as many fundraisers as we used to because you guys kind of seem to have lost interest in our fundraisers. But if you're not going to go to our fundraisers, you're going to have to open your pocketbooks. So we are, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 months away from having to close our doors. So we don't want to do that, obviously. We reached out to some politicians in the area and we asked them if they would like sponsor a meeting, and Jonathan Stickland did. So that was done. And then we had an individual, David Mason, stepped up and he sponsored a whole meeting, so that's great. So if anybody feels led to ask their politician or, their elected official, or if they have an extra $1,000 laying around, they want to sponsor a meeting, or if you want to get a group together and sponsor a meeting.
Or a local business?
Or a local business, it's anything like that. Obviously, we're gonna pass the hat now, Sheridan and Joe, if you wanna do that, and that's, a couple bucks, whatever you got. If you don't have money, I'm not pressuring you at all, but sometimes people do have money and they wanna give and they believe in what we do. So just putting that out there, and our board is gonna have to have bigger conversations about this, so.
Okay, 20?
What else? Oh, Connie, I saw you come in. Go ahead.
Thank you all very much. I called Julie because I meant to come in January, and I didn't get out here. But mainly what I wanted to come and do is thank each and every one of you for being so awesome supporters of mine. I was previously senator for Senate District 10. We did lose that election, but I want to give y'all some good news.
What are you running for?
I want to let you all know what we were able to do with our campaign because of y'all. Whether it was prayers, money, time, phone calls, all of that. We, the campaign knocked on over 130,000 doors. The Abbott campaign knocked on over 50,000 doors for us. Our campaign called over 200,000 people. We had a total of 27 staffers for our campaign. We can't pay staffers without donations, right? And y'all allowed that to happen. We walked the entire district, in District 10, twice, some parts 3 times. We had over 150 active volunteers who helped us, many of you right here, throughout the campaign. Our first block walk, which many of you remember, it was a volunteer block walk. It was, the skies opened up and it was raining horrendously, and we thought, oh my God, is anybody gonna come? We had 50 people there, 50 people there that day that then got on the phone. Some people did go ahead and walk. We had over 4,000 yard signs placed within the district. We had over 100 4x8 signs. We outraised our opponent 2-to-1 on nearly every financial report. We ended up spending $2.5 to $3 million on this Senate campaign, which is outrageous that this is where we've gotten to in politics today. We sent over 200,000 text messages, and not only that, we had the support from conservative, grassroots Republicans, moderate, establishment, Austin people. I mean, everybody said, you got this, Connie, you're gonna win this. And we would have with your support and your help. What I'm here to tell you today is do not take this, which was a horrible down ballot race, a down ballot election night. Do not transfer that into a specific issue that you may think was the result of this. If you are, and usually it's something that you're passionate about. If you think it was school choice, that's why they lost. It was local control. It was education. It was all these issues. Throw it all out the window. Throw it out the window. Trust me, we've got the data to back everything up that I'm telling you tonight. It had nothing to do with any issues. It didn't have anything to do, and you probably know this, preaching to the choir, but I'm gonna let you know, since we have the data to support it, had nothing to do with where you were on the ideological spectrum of being a Republican. It had to do with the left's red-hot anger at our president, that they do not like him, and then they had a Beto come in and spend 70 or 80, what was it, $80 million in Texas. The good news is that we lost, let me see what the numbers are here. We lost by 3 points, Senate District 10, which is, we knew it was a 50-50 district, right? It's got, it's very in the middle of Tarrant County. We have no rural, which saved many of our many of our candidates. Ted Cruz lost Senate District 10 by 7.5 points. We lost it by 3. We had approximately 5,000 Beto Burton voters. And you only get that because you have a campaign that's hustling, and you have people on the ground that are working hard for you. We could have easily lost that, as bad as Ted lost that. And you all know about, we lost, Andy Wynn and JP and that kind of a thing. So, I said I was gonna give you good news, didn't I? But basically what I want to tell you is, that, you never know. I mean, this happens to the Democrats as well, right? You get these sweep. It wasn't a blue sweep, it was a Beto, which is very different,
Yeah.
right? We are still, we're still gonna work, gotta continue to work. 2020 is coming, and Beto isn't going anywhere, right? So, keep your heads up. Do not let a particular issue stump you and think this is what it's all about. It's about the fact that we've got to get out there, keep working all the new voters and letting them know what we stand for. We've got to make the legislature come back with bold, conservative things out of the session too, right? Because we want to be energized and support them better. So keep on them during the session. I'm going to keep fighting. Don't worry. They're not going to get rid of me that easily. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you all for what y'all did. Done what we did without you, and really it was pretty amazing, frankly, that we did as well as we did. So thank you again. Keep your heads up. We're going to come back and we're going to get it in. So thank you.
Okay, Fran, do you want to talk about the kickoff trip? Okay.
So I'm glad Chris Putnam talked to us about SB2, and I want you to know that our citizen advocate group had, I lost count, but like 10 or 12 people down there on Wednesday to testify at that hearing. Most of us testified, but if you don't let that scare you. If you don't want to get up and testify, it's okay. You can submit written testimony. You can go and register just, I support this bill, or I oppose this bill, or whatever it might be. So, my plug here tonight is for citizen advocates. This is what we do. We work for and against legislation that either aligns with our core values or doesn't. And I'm so happy to say that we have close to 100 people on our citizen advocate list, but don't think that's enough. It's never, ever enough. We always need more, because out of that 100 people, I was able to get 10 to go to Austin on Wednesday. It'd been great if we could have 20 or 30 or 50, but that's the reality of our world. We have jobs, we have children, we have lives, so we go when we can. But our kickoff trip, which we always try to do every year, make it fun and exciting and introduce new people who've never been and things like that, is planned for February 26th. You may have seen this on Facebook. If you're on the Citizen Advocate list, I sent out an email Sunday about it. We're probably going to rent a bus if we get enough people, but we have to have enough people to make it worthwhile. So if you're interested in that, please email me. My email's has it if you don't. So that I can kind of get a head count, and then as soon as I have a head count, we will work out the details. If we take a bus, there will be a fee. We don't have the money to just float a bus for 40 or 50 people, but we'll keep it as low as we can. Just a couple of things we're going to do that day is we're going to have an official tour of the Capitol building, which is cool, especially if you've never been there. If you've only been once or twice, it's always helpful. We are going to have a tour of the Supreme Court building by Judge Burt Richards and possibly some other judges, and he's going to try to get us a couple of Supreme Court judges to come talk to us. So that's exciting. I've never been in that building. We are going to visit the Capitol Visitor Center, which is on the grounds of the Capitol. It's the oldest state office building in the state, and it is basically a Texas museum history. We're going to have a Capitol scavenger hunt if you want to play that game with prizes. Am I forgetting something?
Eat the grill.
Oh, lunch. I forgot lunch. Usually we buy our lunch at the Capitol Grill. It's a very nice restaurant inside the building. There isn't really time to go outside the building. But if you don't want to do that, or if you have special food needs, you're welcome to bring along a sack lunch for yourself. Anyway, it's just gonna be a fun day, especially if we can get enough to do the bus, because bus rides are fun, and it's relaxing and comfortable, and even though you have to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning, you can sleep if you want to on the bus, so. I hope that as many as you can will join us, and keep in mind, children are welcome as long as they're accompanied by a responsible adult. It's a great learning opportunity for them too, and we need to train up future citizen advocates. Thanks.
Okay, so before we get to our speaker, we have a couple of awards to give out. The first, for those of you who came in late or didn't catch it, I know if you're expecting our Lieutenant Governor tonight, you're not going to hear from him. So he is in El Paso with President Trump at President Trump's request, so we kind of gave him a pass for canceling on us. But he did say that he will be here next month. So we are rearranging our schedule for next month, our speaker, to accommodate him being here next month. He said there's a slight chance. He said he's like 90% sure he can be here. But next month, our meeting happens to fall on the same day that session allows them to debate regular items, not emergency items. And so he said that session could go long and that would push him here late, but he's getting a private jet to take him here last minute. So whatever, he's gonna try to work it out. He's 90% sure. So come back next month if you're waiting to hear from Dan Patrick and have questions for him. And then Fran will introduce Carrie when the time comes, not yet. We have awards to give first. So, okay, so you know, this is how many years of the Tea Party?
10.
10 years this year we're celebrating. So every month we are giving awards to our top volunteers. And we will start tonight with Sheila Franklin. Come on up. Look at the red one. So you just stand here while I talk about you and be embarrassed. Okay? All right. Need a ride to Austin during the upcoming legislative session? And you may if you listen to Fran. Sheila Franklin is your go-to gal. She's not only a top citizen advocate and dependable driver for trips to Austin, she's also a frequent volunteer at our events. Are you trying to get off the stage?
No, she's
You're trying to get out of life. I know, it's really annoying. Okay. Sheila is a retired great-grandmother from Fort Worth who spent her career at, is it Copper's Cove ISD in Central Texas near Fort Hood. Her husband, who is here tonight, thank you for joining us, served in the U.S. Army for almost 23 years and is a Vietnam veteran. Thank you for that. And while Sheila's been a voter since age 21, because the age was lowered to 18 in 71, she didn't attend her first political rally until 2009, when she gathered in South Lake Square to protest the changes that were happening in our government under President Barack Obama. That's what we thank him for, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Her quest for information led her to attend numerous rallies and meetings. NETTP was one of those, she says. I watched everything conservative I could find on television and on the net. I continue my involvement with NETTP because of the great speakers and the camaraderie with other like-minded citizens. During the Obama years, she attended many Tea Party rallies and the Glenn Beck rally on the Mall in DC in 2010. She and 2 other members from our Tea Party even road tripped 1,600 miles round trip to Iowa for the first in the nation of Senator Rick Santorum, braving blizzard whiteout conditions on the way home. She's currently involved in several political groups, including Northeast Tarrant Tea Party and the United Republicans of Tarrant County. She says, I have serious concerns about the direction of some of the decisions made and actions taken by our leaders, primarily in the past administration. I hope that my voice, added to the many other conservative voices, can make a difference in our national direction and value standard in order to leave our constitutional republic intact for my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Closer to home, during the previous 3 Texas legislative sessions, she has made numerous trips to Austin to speak with our representatives and senators about issues important to us. Just visiting our legislators face-to-face lets them know real people are affected by their votes, she says. We never really know if they are impacted, but we hope they are. At least they know we're paying attention, and I am recognized by name by many, and certainly my face is familiar to many others. Am I making a difference? I pray I am. I'm pretty sure she is. Thank you so much. James Ashby, come on up. I doubt if there's anybody in here that doesn't know James. So, let's hear what was written about him. I didn't write these. We have volunteers that have put these together for us, and I don't know who wrote these particular ones, but thank you so much. Okay, James Ashby is originally from Chicago. But we're glad he decided to become a Texan. James is probably one of the hardest working political activists you'll find anywhere. He's currently involved actively with 39 political groups. During most any night of the week, if you are politically active, you might see James quietly setting up his sound equipment for an event and tearing it down afterwards. He has received numerous awards and recognitions for his volunteer work at the local, state, and national levels, including Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and Senator Cruz. James was introduced to Northeast Tarrant Tea Party in 2012 when he was block walking for Stephanie Click. He began volunteering with us soon after that and has been a reliable, dedicated volunteer ever since. James has managed sound and audio for our meetings and special events, bringing his own equipment, and is always quick to step up for whatever we need. That included building a small stage for our Texas Tough events and even making homemade paper towel holders for the food tables.
Yes.
I'm not kidding.
That's true.
He doesn't just provide it, he like goes way above and beyond. So, and James is also the bringer of the flags whenever and wherever needed. James puts in hundreds of hours each election cycle supporting his favorite days with block walking and pole reading. His hardworking, generous spirit has been a great asset to Northeast Tarrant Tea Party. In his spare time, when James is not traveling and working for political causes, his hobby and passion is model trains. He has 2 rooms in his house. I have seen them, guys. It is phenomenal. He has 2 rooms in his house dedicated to his train collection and likes to share his knowledge of history and how trains shaped America. He also expresses his passion for sound and audio at the personal level with a complete wall in his house of sound audio equipment that would make some professional sound folks jealous. Again, way over the top. He doesn't do anything small. Okay. James travels all over the country, attending and participating in various political events, seminars, workshops, and conventions. He has an impressive collection of photos he's taken with various people he's met along the way. Ask him to share some of his stories and adventures. Thank you, James, for literally giving Northeast Tarrant Tea Party a voice.
Thank you.
Okay, I get to introduce our speaker tonight, which is an honor and a pleasure. Carrie Cheshire is one of my favorite people at Empower Texans. I do love everybody at Empower Texans. But I've always been particularly impressed with Carrie, with his knowledge, his ability to articulate that knowledge and connect with people. I love reading his articles that he writes. If you don't follow that with Empower Texans, I highly recommend that you do that. Carrie is a 6th-generation Texan. I did not know that about him. Was raised in Mont Bellevue and attended Barbers Hill High School, where he graduated in 2010. That's another thing that's amazing to me. He graduated high school in 2010. And look what he's doing now. He's worked for several campaigns, including the original Cruz crew. He served as the canvas coordinator for Cruz in his first senatorial campaign and was active in the Student Senate, where he led the charge against tuition and fee increases and advocated for conservative principles such as religious liberty and concealed carry on campus. Did I mention he went to Texas A&M? This was particularly impressive for me. During his college years, he co-founded a nonprofit newspaper to inform students without the spin from administrators. Sort of segues nicely into what he's doing today. Carrie bleeds maroon and is an Aggie football fanatic, avid reader, amateur genealogy researcher. Did you bring any beer tonight? Carrie is the Vice President of Empower Texans. Please welcome him tonight in place of Dan Patrick. I think you're going to love it.
Thank you, Fran. Can everyone hear me without my microphone?
No, you must.
No? Okay. I've been told I'm a loudmouth my entire life. I just kind of wanted to test it out right there. I guess not as much as everybody said. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Fran. As you mentioned, my name is Kerry Cheshire. I'm the Vice President of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, which is the premier project of Empower Texans. I'm the guy that gets to hand out torches and pitchforks, which is my favorite thing to do, and I figure I'm in a pretty good audience for that this evening. The torches that I mentioned are our Texas Scorecard, which is our newsletter that we make available to all Texans, both online and in print. If you are not a subscriber to that already, you can go, there's a sign-up sheet right outside the door. You can also text the word scorecard to 52886 on your phone. It will subscribe you right there. That's scorecard to 52886. And the other big thing that I'm behind is what's called our Fiscal Responsibility Index. This is where we give lawmakers a grade after every session on how they do on issues of limited government, taxation, fiscal responsibility, and liberty. You can see that some lawmakers do very, very well. Jonathan Stickland has a 100. You can see that some lawmakers, like Chris Putnam's state representative, don't do so well. And we got everybody in between. And really, what I really like most about Empower Texans is that I get the opportunity to basically get paid to be an activist. Because I'm exactly like all of y'all. I've been active in my community from the very get-go. My first job in politics was when I was 6 years old. I was putting ice in cups of tea, iced tea, for a Democrat county judge where I was from. I very quickly started volunteering and block walking for Ron Paul, who was my congressman. In high school, I rigged our straw poll for Mike Huckabee. So if you look at it, there's a 2008 Barbers Hill High School straw poll, and Mike Huckabee won it outright. Did not win the presidency outright at all, but I only think that's because I wasn't managing his presidential campaign. So I went to Texas A&M. Thank you. Very quickly got involved there with Ted Cruz's campaign on campus, which they tell you, okay, we're going to have you be the campus coordinator. What you actually get to do is go block walk the entire time and sign up people to vote. But that was actually my favorite thing because it was getting out and talking to real people, to real Texans, hearing their story, finding out what issues they're motivated about, why they're conservative, what they're concerned about in the future of this country. And that's really kind of what motivated me to start our newspaper that we started. Now, we say it was a nonprofit newspaper because there is no profitable newspaper. There is no profit. That's why you keep seeing all these layoffs everywhere. But really, we were very successful on campus. We fought against a couple tuition hikes, and we got a member of the Board of Regents to resign. It was a lot of fun time, digging up dirt on local officials. But what I'm here to talk to you about tonight is not about me. It's something that affects all of us, and that's our Texas legislature. And I'm here replacing Dan Patrick, who decided that Trump was more important than y'all. I guess I'm not more important than Trump, but that's okay. Well, I just hope that while he's there with him, he tells him that it is an emergency and we do. I was on Twitter earlier today because I think everybody my age spends all their day on Twitter. And I came across this statistic. I was telling a couple people this before the committee for this meeting. Absolutely astounding. Canada has 40,000 Canadians in Canadian prisons. We have 45,000 illegal aliens in our prisons. We have more illegal aliens in our prisons than the entire prison population of Canada. If that isn't an emergency, if that doesn't say that we need the president to immediately start construction on the wall, I don't know what is. Absolutely astounding. And here in Texas, we've got our state at the head of some of the biggest magnets. It was only last session that we were able to finally ban sanctuary cities. We've still got in-state tuition, and we've got Democrats now who are trying to give them driver's licenses. But the positive news is that it's not all bad in the Texas legislature. As Chris Putnam mentioned, there is a really positive property tax reform bill that's out that's going to give us a whole lot more power. What he didn't talk about, because he kind of stole a lot of the stuff that I was going to talk about, what he didn't talk about were some things that I like even more about that bill. Number one, when you get your property tax bill, if this reform bill passes, it's going to have the vote by your taxing entity for them to raise taxes. It's going to say, you had County Commissioner Joe and County Commissioner Susie And Joe voted for it, Susie voted against it. Here's your tax increase. That's gonna be on your bill. It's gonna have their contact information, their email, their phone number. It's gonna tell you both how to get in contact with them and how to go protest your taxes, which we need more people doing.
Yeah.
And those rollback elections that we're talking about, where if they do try and raise it over 2.5%, they won't be able to have that in the teacher's lounge on Tuesday if it's raining. I mean, they run these things like passport offices. They're gonna have it on the November general election ballot, which would be incredible. I mean, you think about all the TREs that you see. You think about all the bond elections that you see, where they try and hide them in the dog days of summer. They try and make it during new student orientation. They try and do the mobile voting hours where they move it from one teacher's lounge and one hospital and one county official annex to another. No. Uniform election dates for the November ballot, which would more than quintuple the amount of people that are typically turning out for these things. And they probably start rejecting them. Because, I don't know, who thinks that they don't pay enough? Not seeing a single hand. But those are all the elements of the reform bill. Now, there are two things that we have to be very, very careful of. The bill passed as it is, as we're talking about it, out of the committee today. The problem is there are already Democrats, there are already liberal Republicans. There are people who would take your tax dollars and go down and testify against you and Austin, taxpayer-funded lobbyists, out in. Despite patriots like this group who came down to testify, we were still outnumbered on that property tax reform bill. It was 135 to 148. And I gotta tell you, when that witness list came out on Friday, me and the other people in Power Texas, we were combing through it. You see mayor, school board member, city councilman, county commissioner, county judge, firefighter union representative, police union representative.
Not Colleyville Mayor.
Not Colleyville Mayor. But we poured over that thing for 2 hours. We were only able to find one guy that we thought might be a just regular Joe average citizen. And we were like, okay, well, we got to find out who this guy is. You know, I'm not like the Democrats. We didn't want to dox this guy. I didn't want to bring a PowerPoint slide with his name and address and all that stuff here. We had to figure out what he does. And we looked him up, and he's a big-time Democrat donor. He's a big-time Democrat voter. And we tried to see what we could find out about this guy. And we spent 2 hours. And finally, we got him. He was an elevator union constructor administrator.
Oh, who?
Yeah, I didn't know that elevator constructors had a union. They do. And this guy wouldn't testify against you having the ability to vote on tax increases because, and we actually went and looked this up, and it's kind of crazy, on all of these bonds, when they go and update the schools, if you update an existing school with a bond that was built prior to the ADA, and it's a 2-story school, boom, you gotta have an elevator. And so the elevator constructor lobby was now testifying against property tax reform. Now, if that doesn't tell you the government's gotten too big, I don't know what does. But all of this is great, Carrie. All of this is great, Chris Putnam. All of this is great, Fran. But who would be happy if I told you your property taxes are only gonna increase 2.5%? I think kind of this, doesn't this TEA stand for something?
Taxed enough
Taxed
already.
enough already, absolutely. And we've got to have actual reform. And the scary thing right now is that in Austin, or actual relief, see, I'm already falling into it. Lawmakers are trying to distract us all with this big flag of reform and hope that we forget about the relief. Hope that we forget about the fact that already in this state, people are being taxed out of their homes. People are having to choose in their retirement, I'm gonna go to Colorado, I'm gonna go to Florida, because Texas has the 4th highest property taxes in the nation. That's a current problem. And none of this reform bill is gonna help anything with that problem. It'll stop it from getting worse. But if you go to the hospital because you're sick, would you be satisfied if the doctor said, well, we're just gonna stop it from getting worse? No, you want to get better. I want this infection out. I want this disorder fixed. Or else I'm not going to pay you. Screw off. And that's what we ought to be telling our lawmakers. They keep talking about, oh, well, we can't talk about property tax relief without talking about school finance reform. Okay, that's true. But they've absolutely proved that the inverse isn't true. They've been talking about school finance reform now for how many years? And who's actually filed a relief proposal? They're not there. You know, it was before I was born, but I've seen it on YouTube. It was a commercial. I think y'all, the Wendy's had in the 80s that said, where's the beef?
Yeah.
Well, my question for the Texas legislature is, where's the relief? Where is it? Where is it hiding? Because we've literally got some school districts, the taxpayers in these school districts, whose homes are 40, 50, 60% paying more than 40, 50, 60% more than they should have to be paying. Because of Chapter 41 of the Texas Government Code called the Wealth Redistribution Tax. Yeah, that was done not while Bernie Sanders was governor, but while Republicans were in charge of Texas. Look it up, Chapter 41 of the Texas Government Code, the Wealth Redistribution Tax. That's the real name of Robin Hood. That's why they call it Robin Hood, because it's wealth redistribution, where they take money up here from Grapevine, Colleyville, Trophy Club, everywhere in between, and go give it down to some podunk town that isn't run right. Now, what we've talked about is, okay, what we need to do is we need to reduce these taxes by using existing sales taxes, come in and buy it down across the state. You'd have a uniform standard by which the state would be giving money to school districts that you could later have perhaps follow the child. But that's just if you're kind of sneaky, conspiratorial. And uniform to alleviate these big problems. And it's not just a problem in wealthy areas. Houston ISD is the biggest payer into Robin Hood. Houston ISD, with the majority of their students are economically disadvantaged. Austin ISD. You have huge groups of people where, because of their very expensive high rises in real estate, they're paying 40%, in the city of Austin, 40% of Austin ISD's budget is recaptured. That's how bad it's getting here in the state of Texas. And we're not seeing lawmakers come out with a serious solution to address this problem. We're not seeing it yet. Now, they're saying, oh, well, we're working on something. Just wait and see. But we haven't seen it yet. And we haven't seen it yet because taxpayers have not been mad enough at them and because they haven't listened. You know, we talked about the November election earlier. Republicans didn't do so well in that November election because what was the Republican message? Democrats said, we're unhappy with health care. We're going to do better health care. What did Republicans say? Hey, well, remember how we cut your taxes before? Okay, well, if I vote for you, what are you going to do for me now? There was no energized Republican standard. I mean, we were energized because we're conservative Republicans and it's important to us. But if you're Joe Republican voter, what were you getting? And if we close out this session where Republicans have had a quarter century in Texas of shutting Democrats out of statewide office, of maintaining supermajorities in the Texas House and the Texas Senate without delivering real property tax relief, then what the hell have we been doing the last quarter century? Literally 25 years, a Democrat has not been elected to statewide office in Texas. But property taxes have just gone up and up and up and up and up. One exception, 2006, Governor Perry did the franchise tax. Property taxes actually went down very briefly, and then the next year they were back up. That's the problem we've got right now. And we need lawmakers to understand that if they don't actually provide real property tax relief, to where when you're looking at your bill from 2018 and you're looking at your bill from 2019, this one is lower. That's the only definition of relief. That's it. It's only in government when you can call it relief when you've cut the rate of growth. Nowhere else would that be the case. You wouldn't tell your boss, hey, thanks for the raise, if he said, hey, we increased the rate that we will raise you when we give you a raise. That's not gonna do me any good. I got bills right now. Just stop jerking my chain. Are you gonna give me a raise? No, okay, you big boy, I can move on with that. But that's what the legislature needs to do. They keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Talk is cheap. Property taxes are expensive. There's not a single Texan that doesn't feel like they're not overtaxed and overburdened already. But the good news is I think we will start to see some stuff there. We are hearing whispers that they're going to come out with a school finance proposal plan that talks about maybe capping revenue, maybe increasing the sales tax. We don't exactly know. But they need to get on the ball pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because right now, taxpayers they've had enough. And they've noticed things like how when Governor Abbott gave the state address, the word relief was never even mentioned.
No.
They're starting to notice that. They're also starting to notice that issues like constitutional carry aren't really moving in the Texas House, aren't really moving in the Texas Senate. Now, to be fair, a lot of people there are critical of Speaker Dennis Bonnen for his committee appointments. They should be. He also hasn't referred that bill yet. We could see it go to a Republican committee. But it's not moving in the Texas Senate either. We're not seeing a real pro-life bill that gets serious traction. Until last week, we actually saw the heartbeat bill, which would lower the age of abortion from 20 weeks to 12 weeks here in the state of Texas. That's finally getting traction. State Representative Briscoe Kane and other lawmakers are leading that charge. It hasn't been filed in the Senate. We've got a whole bunch of Republicans right now who want to go and hide after the November elections. You don't see the union dues bill. You don't see the Privacy Act. You don't see the issues that unite us as conservatives, that have overwhelming super support among our delegates. Because right now they're kowtowing to Democrats. They're kowtowing to the liberal media. They're hoping, well, okay, we just, we need to go and just spend a lot of money. That'll make them happy. We'll go give $5,000 to all the teachers who vote against us. I don't think that's really going to work. Because I'm going to tell you, the folks who've been sitting around watching Modern Family and complaining about Dan Patrick for 4 years aren't going to change their tune when they just get another check. You're going to say, thanks. Write that check out to Mike Collier for Texas, $5,000. That's what they're going to do. Or the majority of teachers are actually going to be like, thanks, going to go on vacation. Who did that? I don't know. Some people. Republicans never get credit for expanding government from those people. Were there a huge amount of people who voted for Republicans after George Bush did Medicare Part D? No. Were there huge people who voted for Republicans after George Bush expanded the Voting Rights Act? No. Every time Republicans do Democrats' work for them, they just get more Democrats to engage. We should never be doing that. We shouldn't be passing anything through the legislature in a Republican state that doesn't have the support of a supermajority of Republicans. And they're hiding right now despite their majority. If you do the math, think about this. Republicans in the state of Texas have a bigger majority in the Texas House and the Texas Senate than Donald Trump did when he was elected at the federal level. They were able to do a whole lot of things. They cut taxes, they cut regulations, they appointed a lot of good judges. What are you seeing here in the state of Texas?
No.
The only difference is leadership. The only difference is leadership in the fact that Republicans in Texas actually have bigger majorities. We are just shy of 2/3 votes in the Texas Senate. We were just shy of 2/3 votes in the Texas House. Now we've got 83 Republicans. If you do that math, imagine if Republicans had a 50-vote majority in the U.S. House. That's what we have in the Texas House mathematically. But we still aren't seeing positive movement. We still aren't. And that's frustrating. We're seeing a lot of really good things on this reform. We're seeing a lot of really good things on CPS. We're seeing a lot of good things on parental rights. We're hearing a lot of other good things. But at the end of this 140 days, every legislator in the state of Texas is going to be judged on what they delivered to the people of Texas. And if they've earned their vote. Because that's what it is. Each one of them is in a job interview right now with each of us. And they're gonna come out at the end with a record. They're gonna come out and say, this is the work that I did. Just like when you have a contractor come in to do something on your house. When you hire somebody to do a job, that's what these people are. They're no different. They're public servants. They work for us. And if they don't like you call them more. If they don't like you emailing them, email them more. There's something I actually read, Julie posted on Facebook about a year ago, and it really struck me. I don't remember the source of the quote, but it was when lawmakers do something good, praise them loudly. But when they do something bad, hound them unceasingly. And that's absolutely what we need. Because we have a citizen legislature. These are people like us. They're not divine, godlike beings. They're schmucks. They're lawyers. To Judge Kim. That's what they are. And because they couldn't become mall cops, they decided to be state representatives. Seriously, could you leave your home, family, business for 140 days over 2 years and run for an election? No, that's why these guys, they don't have anything better to do. That's who we're stuck with. We got a lot of good guys down there in Austin.
Yeah, we did.
Jonathan Sticklin,
I got
Tony Tinderholt, Briscoe Tanning, Bob Hall, a lot of people who are, kind of saying, damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead. And they're taking the bullets for it. Jonathan Sticklin's already got a primary opponent.
Yes, he does.
He's already got a primary opponent. No, I think the guy is a goober. I don't think he's actually going to see it through. He's apparently had like 8 jobs in 7 years, kind of thing, and moves all around the state. He's apparently currently the president of the Klein Chamber of Commerce. I don't know how you can be the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Harris County and run for something in Tarrant County, but maybe you can. I don't know. I don't think he'd win, but that's already where they're at. But look, I know this has kind of seemed negative. That's because it should. We're in the beginning of the session. They haven't done anything yet. You ought to be mad at them because they have the ability and the authority to do the stuff now. And if you don't tell them you want it done now, they'll tell you it'll be done later.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, we'll be in June. And then it'll have to be, well, gosh, we came really close on that. And I got to look, if we just do a little bit better in this coming election, and elect some more Republicans, then I'm sure we can get it done. How many times have we heard that in our lives? We ought to be on their case right now, lighting them up, saying, what are you going to do to fix this? What are you going to do to lower my taxes? What are you going to do to protect my gun rights? What are you going to do to protect religious liberties? What are you going to do to make sure that Texas is leading the way in advancing America? What are you going to do? Because the time is now. The time is never left later. There's a reason they always say the most important election ever is this one. Well, yeah, because we already know the outcome of all the other ones. The most important session of the Texas legislature is this one.
That's right.
It is. They got a chance to get it right. Or they can get it wrong. And if they get it wrong, our state might turn blue. Because if you thought Beto's $80 million was significant, coupled with George Soros's about $20 million that he spent in the state on DA races, buckle up. Texas just became Iowa. We're estimating that we're gonna have $250,000 spent by Democrats in Texas in 2020. Why? Because all the Hillary Clinton supporting Democrats know if they can flip Texas, they don't even ever have to go to Wisconsin again.
That's right.
They don't have to go to Florida again. They don't have to go to Virginia, North Carolina, Michigan, any of the swing states, any of those places.
Texas.
If they flip Texas, there's no mathematical way for Republicans to win.
That's right.
There's not. And if they flip Texas and they control the legislature going into redistricting in 2021 with the U.S. Census, then they will gerrymander Texas to flip its congressional delegation from majority Republican to majority Democrat, which will ensure that there is never a Republican majority in Congress again. You swing 15 Republican U.S. congressmen, that's a swing of 30 in the U.S. House. we'd never have a Republican one again. And so that means lawmakers have to deliver. They have to deliver real results to real Texans, and that starts with real relief. Telling our lawmakers that we actually want real property tax relief, and we're gonna throw them out if they don't deliver it. And all of them, it's incumbent on all of them, even those people who are doing the right thing isn't enough. They gotta get the job done, or we're gonna maybe go find somebody else. So I think that's a brief rundown of where we're at in the legislative session. I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all have. Answer, I will find it for you. So I'll open it up right now. Is that okay?
That's awesome. We only have the one mic though, so you guys are gonna have to speak loud enough to get it on to the.
Chris, I think you can speak loud.
Yeah, you talked about, so every year we talk about Robin Hood reform, or better yet, repeal. Is it not true that the reason we can't get there is because there's just all these rural Republicans that are on the receiving end, and consequently, we just can't get the votes? You know, there's this dynamic, of course, that occurs in these school districts as well, consistent with what I was describing yesterday, where they love to point the finger at Robin Hood and blame Robin Hood for their spending problem, and yet they all support it as well, and their lobbies.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So basically, the brief rundown is Robin Hood repeal and property tax relief so hard because there were rural Republicans whose districts depend on Robin Hood inflows of cash that they're basically pulling out of places like here? Partially, but the fact of the matter is there really aren't that many Republican areas that are recipients of Robin Hood funds. The bigger problem is you get out of this area, you get out of the Houston suburbs, you get out of the cities or whatever, and you have, you know, let's take so I ran Thomas McNutt's campaign against Byron Cook. We have 4 counties, Hill County, which is Hillsborough, cut across to Vero County, which is Corsicana, Freestone County, and Anderson County, which is Palestine. So we've got this belt underneath Dallas. In that district, we had 67 school boards. We had 47 cities. And so you do the math on that. There's 67 school boards, so there's 67 times 8 school board members, times 2 to include their wives, plus another 67 for school board superintendents, plus another probably 3 times 67 for all of their principals. Then you go look at the county side, you got all these county commissioners, you got all these city councilmen and everything else, and all of them are told with our tax dollars, Municipal League, Texas Association of School Boards, Texas Association of School Administrators, all taxpayer-funded lobbyists. Hey, you're the ones getting hosed. It's the state of Texas that's making you have to raise those rates on people. You've got to increase your property taxes on these people. You've got to do it, otherwise your credit rating. If we hurt your credit rating, you wouldn't be able to take out as many bonds. If you didn't get as many bonds, you wouldn't get that school board. You wouldn't get that scoreboard. Oh my gosh. You wouldn't get the turf field. Oh, that would really cripple our community. We can't have that. Hey, you've got to raise taxes, otherwise you won't have enough money in your economic development corp to give that business loan to your brother-in-law who wants to move to town. You can't do that. And so that's the big problem. It's not that they're donor recipient districts, it's that they have a lot more politically motivated and engaged people who suckle at the government teat, who have all of these governmental offices that are in their ear unceasingly, and also ton of them are damn prairie socialists who just want to hand out from the government. And that's the big problem, is that they're listening to them. And meanwhile, their voters, well, I'll vote for Joe because he wears a cowboy hat, believes in God, and goes to my church, so I know he's a conservative. Okay, well, he's supported by the superintendent who just passed a bond that increased your taxes 11.6%. That's the problem with rural communities. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I am a retired school teacher and I started teaching right out of college. I taught in West Texas, and in East Texas. And both of them received, well, East Texas for sure, received the Robin Hood money. I can guarantee you, the children never got the money, the teachers never saw the money, the fat cats at the administration level, superintendents were getting $1 million for a salary. That's where your Robin Hood money is going. It is not going.
So I want to first tell you, thank you for being a teacher. I'm only here because of the positive teacher. My own mother is a teacher. She teaches health science technology at a school in Baytown. You're absolutely right. And that's why last session, when they were talking about the teacher pay raise, the way that they were gonna fund that was by requiring school districts to put more money directly into the classrooms. Because you see that all across the state. You see superintendents in the state of Texas make more money than the president of the United States.
$1 million.
Yeah, if $400,000 is enough for Donald Trump, I think it's enough for superintendents in the state of Texas. If $150,000 is enough for Governor Abbott, that's his salary, I think it ought to be the cap for superintendents here in the state of Texas. Hey, you say the public service is a calling, you're doing it for the kids. So surely you'll support this $800,000 going directly to teach the kids, right? Yeah, I've been trying to get lawmakers to file that legislation about all last month, and I don't know, I might hand out some phone numbers at the end of this meeting, if y'all wanna help me on that. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So what about the public funding of the lobbies that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Where we know, when is that up?
So the fortunate thing is we have seen a little bit of movement on that legislation in the House. Mays Middleton is the one carrying that legislation. He's a brand new conservative freshman, a member of the Freedom Caucus, who I think was elected with a knife between his teeth. So that's a very encouraging thing. The sad truth of the matter is a lot of people don't want to pass that legislation because it ticks off the local officials and it really rocks a whole bunch of votes. And honestly, a lot of these lawmakers want to go on and be taxpayer-funded lobbyists at the end of the day. They want to be the chancellor of the West Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service for people. And, they want to come down to Austin and talk about how much we need the West Texas AgriLife Extension Service, and how much good it does, despite the fact that nobody in Texas knows what it is. That's the big problem there. The other deal is that, as we're talking about these kind of more rural legislators, who a big chunk of their voters are local elected officials, those people push hard and hard against it. And look, there are some legitimate concerns. If you're Muleshoe, Texas, the Texas Municipal League, through its insurance plan and other things, does provide a lot of things to you. The problem is just it comes down and uses your money to fight against you. But we're actually working on something in Empower Texans right now, which is pulling the expense reports of all these local officials who came down and testified against property tax reform. I think there are some taxpayers that need to be empowered with the knowledge of how much their city councilman, their mayor, how much they spent to come down to Austin, and what restaurants they went to, and perhaps maybe what wine they bought, and who they bought it for. I think that'll be really, really encouraging, and I think that's really the path on taxpayer-funded lobbying, is to make more and more of them disclose it, and then have more and more citizens rise up in anger against them. I'll go to you in the back, sir.
Anything new on red light cameras?
There is something. So I was told I can't say anything right now, but I do know that the governor is legislation, and the speaker is supporting legislation, and the lieutenant governor is supporting legislation on red light cameras that should be coming from one of y'all's favorite lawmakers very, very soon. So I would expect to see that very, very quickly. Be very encouraging to see. That's actually something that Greg Abbott has actually been leading on taxpayer-funded lobbying. He's tweeted about it, but so far, no action so far. So.
Can you talk a little bit about election reform and fraud, and not just fraud, but November elections?
Yeah.
And all that.
So the really cool thing about election reform is that we place this session with the alignment of the Elections Committee in the Texas House, where Stephanie Glick is at the charge of that. You've also got Valerie Swanson, Mays Middleton, a number of other conservative legislators. Republicans have a supermajority in that committee. It's very, very exciting. Also in the property tax reform bill, as I mentioned, we are seeing a movement to push all of those rollback TRA elections on the November ballot, which is a big step for uniform election dates. As it relates to rolling polling, closed primaries, uniform election dates for May elections and things like that, I think we will see that legislation move very quickly through the Texas House. The big question is gonna be what happens in the Texas Senate? Where does that go? Who kills it? What's going on? But we ought to have a heightened focus on that. I think it'll be very encouraging to see these issues go to the floor. And you see bad Republican legislators trying to vote against things like closed primaries. That'll be very exciting to see. I've also been told that James Dickey is exploring the possibility of just moving to unilaterally.
Yeah.
And that the Republican Party of Texas might have the legal authority to do that. I think their thought right now is that they do have the legal authority. They just don't know if they want to immediately shoulder all the lawsuits that they get from all the people who are being disenfranchised. As it relates to fraud, we're seeing a lot of stuff be worked on. I think we ought to see something by the end of the month about actually cleaning up the voter rolls. I don't think that will be led by David Whitley. I think as y'all have seen in the coverage, both on our website and other mediums, David Whitley, I don't think performed very well at his nominations hearing. It turns out that you do actually have to answer when you're asked about what your belief of the definition of voter suppression if you want to be Secretary of State. I think he's dug in so far, and Democrats, Abbott has to get a Democrat to vote for him if he wants to make him the Secretary of State. Otherwise, he serves out through the session, and then 10 days afterward, Abbott would appoint someone else. And so I
It's too late.
think we might see that happen with the Secretary of State, but very fluid situation right there. I know the Attorney General's office is working on prosecuting a lot of the people who have been caught. I know that legislation is being worked to give them more prosecutorial discretion. Right now, they can't go and move in on a county unless they have the support of the DA right now because of how weak the Attorney General's office is in Texas. If you wonder why they always sue the federal government, it's because that's where they have jurisdiction. They don't actually have jurisdiction in counties without the consent of the local officials. But I think we ought to see something pretty quick about cleaning up the voter rolls and doing something there. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Where's your organization stand on term limits?
So organizationally, I don't think that we've really had to take a position on term limits because the legislation hasn't popped up. I do know that we supported Article 5, Convention of States, which did push for term limits at the federal level. I think a majority of people in our organization would smile upon and say that we ought to rate term limits at the state level. But that hasn't been an issue that we've really, kind of thoroughly debated. I know that there's kind of a heated argument amongst friends here in conservative circles on what we ought to do in terms of term limits, but we haven't really done that.
Well, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I'm fairly new to this state, and I came from the state, and I fought for that, for term limits. And after it went in place, I would not recommend doing term limits.
What were you from Missouri, sir?
No, I'm Oklahoma.
Okay, yeah, in Missouri, I've heard a lot of the same thing. There's a lot of people who say that basically when you move to term limits, you empower the lobby sphere, and that they basically have, kind of hand anointing. I will note that as conservatives, one of the biggest problems that we've had is open seat elections, where you can't draw a contrast against your opponent by saying that person's not conservative because they have a record. When nobody has a record and it's all about cowboy hats, pictures, and blue bonnets with your family, everybody looks about. Y'all have seen them. That's exactly what they are. You gotta have the white shirt, the blue jeans, leaning on the fence. Maybe you're holding a kid. Your dog's got a bandana. Yeah, that's what they do. And you're looking at it like, there's none of those fences in Hearst. Where did you go to do that? Yeah, they went down to Old Baylor in Waco, and that's where they did it. Anyway, any other questions? Nothing else?
No, hey, I
Oh,
could
sure.
go all
Julie,
night.
keep
If
going.
y'all got nothing, I got more.
Let's
Okay,
do
so
it.
let's talk about what can our state legislature do about the border? How can we help with that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What can our on the border? So I do know that Dan Patrick is actually being genuine in asking Donald Trump, hey, so we spent $800 million over the past 3 sessions, $2.4 billion for, I know I went to A&M, but I can do that easy math. $2.4 billion in border security. If the federal government would just reimburse us for that, we could maybe go and start laying some concrete down in some strategic areas for state security, and then you wouldn't have to say anything. You just say, hey, we're making Texas whole. I do know that they're actually seriously looking at that. In the White House level, I think kind of there's conflicting strategies on the emergency declaration and what they're able to do in terms of get Nancy Pelosi and those people to give them money for the wall and other stuff. That's very kind of a moving target. We'll see what happens there. I do know that there's a legislator here in Texas who is drafting legislation to start building the wall using the rainy day fund.
I don't know.
One-time expenditure? I don't know, so like kind of poll the audience. Who here would support using the rainy day fund to build the wall for Texas? Okay, all those against? Okay, so I'll call it like, most people to agree. Okay. Yeah, well, then, okay, I don't know. It's not my legislation. But that is very interesting and helpful, thank you. So we will see how that goes. I mean, when you talk about the money that it's actually costing Texas, I mean, I ran through that statistic earlier where how we have 45,000 illegal aliens in prisons in the United States. Canada has 40,000 Canadians. I do think a wall makes financial sense, could make financial sense from a strategic standpoint. I'll tell you, I've been down to Laredo, to McAllen, to other areas on the Rio Grande border. And we've probably all seen that video of James O'Keefe in the Obama get up, or not Obama, Osama get up. I'm sorry, I kind of confused those people. He's in the Osama bin Laden get up, and he wades across the river. You can actually do that. Like, I was amazed by, just walking up, in McAllen and in Brownsville stuff, you see the chain link fences around the stuff. But you go 30 miles east, or I guess 30 miles west, you kind of up the Rio Grande Valley. We really popped in this area. It was kind of a wildlife bird estuary or something.
Falcon Lake.
Yeah, that's one of them, but there's another one right next to it. You literally walk right across. And I was like, man, okay, if I was dropped off in Mexico, I would kind of map this out. If I were deported, I would know where to come back, because I'd just wade across here, walk up to the highway, call my buddy to come get me, and I'd be off scot-free. I mean, I've thought about doing it. So look, like if the Power Texans hadn't hired me after I'd been in I had two competing ideas. I was going to do one where I was going to spend a year on food stamps and every kind of public assistance you could, and say, I spent a year on food stamps, or I screwed the federal government, you can too. 5 steps for welfare reform, okay? It's essentially things you can eliminate. Here's what I take advantage of, here's what you can eliminate. I thought about just going down, catching a flight to Mexico City, and seeing if I can illegally immigrate back. Problem is, with all these caravans and cartels and stuff, I'm looking at those numbers, 70% of people sexually assaulted. You are seeing Bob Hall once again champion that legislation in the Texas Senate. It's been very, very encouraging. Bob has forgotten more about grid security than I've been able to learn. And he's a defense expert. So that's been very, very interesting to hear him and watch that legislation move through. It was filed last session in the Texas House by Tam Parker, who is the chairman of the House Republican Caucus, because he is no longer. But it's really becoming mainstream in Republican circles as people look at the actual effects of what it would do, how. The biggest threat is probably the solar flare. But I gotta tell you, people were underestimating how important that is to protect the grid, because you think about having no electricity. I mean, we've seen in hurricanes, we've seen in all these issues, where if you shut off the electricity, not only do you hurt all the people who are dependent on it for dialysis, insulin, all those kinds of things, but literally you've got it off for 3 days and it's the walking dead outside. I mean, literally, the food goes bad in the grocery stores and all kinds of problems. I mean, you look at New Orleans post-Katrina, you look at Beaumont post-Harvey and a lot of stuff. That's some scary, scary stuff. In fact, the matter is the grid security doesn't actually cost all that much. So it's a very important thing to watch. We will see, I think Bob is still kind of on the education tour about it, and we'll see some more movement this session. I don't know if we're going to get a floor vote in either chamber. But I do think it's one thing that has got positive momentum, and that's very encouraging. And I think we could see it move very quickly. Other questions? Yes?
Hey, Jerry, could you talk to us a little bit about, maybe Middleton, awesome freshman legislator who had libraries on how I think there's going to do for, rules amendments they've got?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned Mays Middleton, the guy who was elected with a knife between his teeth. I'm really very happy with Mays because he represents the hometown that I grew up in. He represents my parents and my younger siblings and things like that. And it was a district that was held by a Democrat for the longest time. It was held by a guy named Craig Island, who is now a taxpayer funded lobbyist. And then it was held by Wayne Faircloth, who was just kind of a pre-establishment Republican, who was just like the guy who was running when Republicans won it. It was kind of cool, but he was such a schmuck. He wasn't a lawyer, he was an insurance agent, which is even less. And he was basically a coin-operated State Farm. And he got elected. He was actually like kind of halfway decent, and then he just turned really nasty all of a sudden last session, and really like kind of trying to suck up to Joe Strauss. He really went on and attacked Jonathan Stickland. He attacked Tony Titterholt. He attacked Bill Zedler, which like I don't know how anyone.
Oh, yeah, he's.
And just became a giant jerk. So Mace Middleton ran against him, trounced him in the primary, and came in and literally the first day of the session, first or second day of the session, institutes a rules amendment to term limit the office of Speaker right after Dennis Bonin's elected. Just a very encouraging, powerful thing. Immediately come in and say, hey, this isn't personal. I've never served under you. I made a promise to my constituents that I was going to try and term limit the office of the Speaker, and I'm going to do it. And then to Dennis Bonin's credit, he stepped aside off the dais and, let somebody else preside over the happenings, and they dealt with it very quickly and fairly and came up and did it. The amendment failed, unfortunately. We will have that vote on our fiscal responsibility index, and very much kudos to Mays Middleton for leading the fight on that.
Yeah.
He's also the guy championing ending taxpayer-funded lobbying, ethics reform for elected officials. I mean, Mays is a guy who is exactly like one of us. He was sitting around watching what was going on in the state and got up and said, I have to fix it myself. Very, very encouraging to see all the good stuff that he's doing there. But I think that provides an interesting segue because we're about 2 months in to Speaker Dennis Bonin. And so far we've got kind of positive signs, negative signs. But hey, I'll tell you, a mixed bag is better. It's a whole lot better than a bad bag, which is like with Strauss, it was literally everything he could do to be spiteful against conservatives. Now Dennis Bonin, with his committee assignments, with the way he's been conducting himself, with the way that he's been running the chamber, it seems now like a lot of conservative issues will sink or swim on their own merits, will sink or swim by how many Republicans they could convince to jump on a board. Now look, is he perfect? No, not by any means. And we're going to see by the end of the session what the outcomes of the Texas House are. He's got to be held even more accountable than Joe's state representative. It's his job to deliver property tax relief. It's his job to deliver property tax reform. It's his job to protect our rights. But we saw something incredibly encouraging with this property tax reform bill, and that it's got the support of the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the Texas House, Dennis Bonin. Last session, in the session before that, you'd have a big press release come out like Greg Abbott. I'm Greg Abbott, and I want to ban sanctuary cities. 2 hours later, Dan Patrick, me too. 2 hours after that, nothing. 2 hours after that, Ken Paxton, we ought to do that. We ought to ban sanctuary cities. The next day, Glenn Hager jumping aboard. Literally all the statewide Republicans jumping aboard common sense stuff. Hell, CPS reform. Strauss didn't even put out a press release. I stand with Governor Abbott on CPS reform. No, he called his agenda horse manure. And you literally had somebody whose entire agenda was spite. Spite towards conservatives.
Yeah.
And working in a coalition with the Democrats. Now at least Dennis Bonin is supported by Republicans. We're seeing an actual guy who not happy with everything that's happened so far. But okay, I understand that. You haven't kicked us out. You'll talk to us. Conservatives are getting a fair shake. You put the former chairman of the Freedom Caucus on appropriations, that's a pretty powerful thing. You put Tony Tinnerholm as the vice chair of Homeland Security and Public Safety, that's a lot more merit moving up in the world. And then you saw some bad Republicans be sent to the elephant graveyard. Sarah Davis is out. She is not in favor anymore. You're seeing a number of other Republicans moved to the sidelines. Drew Darby. A lot of other Republicans moved out, and you're seeing a lot more conservative, younger blood come up. Very, very encouraging to see. Now, of course, that'll be something that we have to watch moving forward. He's not, kind of leading. He doesn't have the same kind of style as Dan Patrick. But we are seeing more positive results out of the Texas House. Julie.
This will have to be your last question, and it'll be mine. Anything about abortion, because I know that I've heard mixed reports that even Texas Right to Life is kind of backing off this session for strategic reasons, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I'll let Texas Right to Life speak for really Texas Right to Life. What I'll tell you is they're really focusing on three things. Preborn Non-Discrimination Act, which is basically the Schaefer Amendment that we remember from last time, the protection for children with fetal abnormalities at 20 weeks and later, putting that into law and making basically hard stop, no abortions after 20 weeks for any reason other than the health of the mother, which is exceedingly rare. We had a pro-life bill go to the Supreme Court, was our legislation, HB 2 here in Texas, that basically said no abortions after 20 weeks. Abortion facilities must meet the same surgery standards as ambulatory surgical centers, and the doctor must have admitting privileges within a hospital within 30 miles. They struck those two out. Allowed the 20-week deal to stay intact. The 12-week thing is going straight to the Supreme Court because of all the other states. The hope is that because we have a more conservative Court of Appeals, it would be able to move more quickly through our state, would not have an injunction. The big pusher behind that is former Speaker of the House, Tom DeLay, who is really big behind the heartbeat on Thursday of last week. But that's kind of the status of those bills. I believe Tony Tinnerholm has once again filed the abolition bill, but I don't anticipate very much movement on that. But the heartbeat bill actually has Phil King and a number of other Republicans on it, and that one probably will move. But I think this is my last question, so I want to again thank each and every one of y'all for inviting me to be here. I'm happy to be here, and I'll be hanging around, happy to answer your questions. I appreciate your opportunity giving me a chance to come out to real Texas. As you notice, I don't have purple hair, I don't have piercings, I don't fit in.